The millionaire's luxury car glided slowly down the narrow road. A stark contrast to the faded storefronts of his old neighborhood. His mind, usually occupied with stock prices and business deals, was now flooded with memories he had long tried to bury. The sleek, modern skyscrapers that pierced the skyline were a constant reminder of how much the world had changed. But his gaze was fixed on a single, deserted house at the end of the street. It had been empty for years. The paint was peeling in long, curling strips. The windows were shattered like broken teeth. And the garden had surrendered to a wild tangle of weeds. A strange mix of nostalgia and sadness washed over him. He had spent his entire childhood within those walls, chasing his brother through the small rooms, lulled to sleep by the sound of his parents' laughter, and dreaming of a future that now felt so distant. He parked his car and took a deep breath, the expensive leather scent mixing with the faint smell of rain on pavement. He was here to do a job, a simple demolition. Erase the past, make way for the new. But a deep, unexplainable hesitation held him back. Memories surged, each one more vivid than the last. Hide and seek with his little brother. The comforting aroma of his mother's cooking wafting from the kitchen. The sound of the wind whistling through the broken windows. A ghost story he'd invented to scare himself on stormy nights. A faint smile touched his lips, but it was tinged with regret. He had left this place in pursuit of wealth and success, promising he would return. Now, looking at the crumbling walls and sagging roof, he wondered if it was a promise he should have kept. He pushed open the creaky gate, the cold rusted metal a shock against his manicured hand. Dry leaves crunched under his expensive shoes. The garden was a miniature jungle, with grass reaching his knees and twisted vines strangling the walls. Yet a single, lonely tree stood tall, a survivor of years of neglect. He walked toward the front door, each step stirring a ghost of the past childhood adventures. Petty arguments with his siblings, quiet evenings spent with his parents. The door was stuck. He put his shoulder into it, and it swung open with a groan that echoed through the silence. The smell hit him instantly. Dust, damp wood, and something faintly sweet, like old paper or forgotten dreams. The house seemed smaller than he remembered. The walls were faded and cracked. The furniture was long gone, and the floor was coated in a thick layer of dust that perfectly captured his footprints. He ran a hand along the wooden staircase railing, a phantom thrill of sliding down it as a boy running through him. He stepped into what was once the living room. Thin shafts of sunlight pierced the gloom through the broken windows, and for a fleeting moment he could almost see his family there, talking and laughing. What did passersby see? A lonely, empty house, devoid of life, filled only with echoes. He wandered from room to room, his fingers tracing the cracks in the walls, opening empty cupboards, peering into dark corners. Every detail whispered a forgotten story, the uneven floorboards he used to trip over, the small dents in the doorframe from a toy car, the faded wallpaper that once burst with bright, cheerful patterns. Despite its emptiness, the house felt alive. He realized that staying away had been easier than facing the flood of emotions it held. He paused in the center of the main room, closing his eyes. The memories were overwhelming. His mother calling him for dinner, his father's deep, reassuring voice, his brother's laughter bouncing off the walls. For the first time in years, he felt a profound connection to the life he had so eagerly left behind. But reality beckoned. He had responsibilities, projects, a life far removed from this decaying little house. He was here to tear it down. The thought now sent a sharp ache through his heart. As he turned to leave, his eye caught something in a corner he'd overlooked, a small pile of old letters tied together with a faded ribbon. They were dusty and yellowed with age, but they seemed to have been waiting for him. An impulse he couldn't explain urged him to pick them up. He carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the top letter. As he read, his eyes widened. The words on the page were voices from the past, carrying secrets, confessions, and feelings he never knew existed. Suddenly, the house was no longer just a building. It was a keeper of stories, a silent witness to the life that had shaped him. He realized this visit might not end with demolition after all, but with discovery. A spark of excitement he hadn't felt in years ignited within him. He stepped back outside, the sun warming his face. He took one last look at the house, the wind rustling through the lonely tree, and a sense of anticipation stirred in his soul. Something was waiting for him in there, something that could change everything. And for the first time in a very long time, he wasn't sure if he was ready for what he might find. Stepping back inside the deserted house, the millionaire's curiosity grew. He held a bundle of old letters, their ribbons frayed at the edges. Each one seemed to whisper a story, and he could almost hear faint echoes of voices from the past. Settling onto the dusty floor, he carefully opened the first letter. The handwriting was delicate, almost fragile, yet the words carried a profound weight and emotion. They spoke of dreams, regrets, and untold secrets, things his childhood self could never have understood. He quickly realized these weren't ordinary letters. They were messages meant for someone who had once lived here, someone who had left a piece of their soul within these walls. A shiver ran down his spine. Every sentence pulled him deeper into a story that had been waiting for decades. Turning to the next letter, he uncovered confessions about family struggles, sacrifices, and moments of courage that shaped the people he had loved as a child. He never knew these stories existed. Suddenly, the house felt less like an empty building and more like a living memory. He moved carefully from room to room, each step stirring the dust, his eyes scanning for more. Behind an old cabinet in the living room, he noticed a small, barely visible door. Its edges were worn, as if it had been opened only a handful of times. Intrigued, he knelt and tried the handle, which creaked in protest. The door opened slowly, revealing a tiny hidden room. Dim light filtered in, illuminating a collection of objects placed on a wooden shelf. Old photographs, trinkets, a small music box, and an envelope with his childhood name on it. His heart raced as he picked up the envelope. The handwriting was familiar, yet foreign, like a ghost reaching out from the past. He opened it to find a letter addressed to him, written by someone he had forgotten existed. It spoke of hope, encouragement, and advice meant to guide him through life, words he had never received, wisdom he had never known. In that moment, the millionaire understood. The house was trying to tell him something, not through its walls or furniture, but through memories preserved on paper. It was as if the house itself was alive, holding the stories of those who had once called it home. He spent hours in that small room, uncovering letters, photographs, and journals that detailed events he had no recollection of. Each item revealed pieces of his childhood he had overlooked: a neighbor's kindness, his mother's sacrifices, his father's quiet strength, and even moments of sorrow he had never fully appreciated. The millionaire felt a strange mix of sadness and joy. As he pieced together the life that had unfolded within these walls, he realized he had been blind to the significance of his past. The abandoned house was not just a building to demolish, it was a treasure chest of lessons, love, and resilience. The more he discovered, the more he felt connected to the person he had been. The boy who had run through these rooms, laughed and cried, dreamed and failed, was still a part of him. He found a photograph tucked behind the music box, a picture of his family, smiling, unaware of the struggles ahead. It was a frozen moment of happiness, reminding him of what truly mattered. Not wealth, not success, but family, love, and memories. As day turned to evening, long shadows stretched across the room. The millionaire realized he had spent hours lost in discovery, yet he had only scratched the surface. He stood and walked through the other rooms, each one revealing small surprises: an old diary with his childhood sketches, a forgotten toy that had once been his favorite, a letter from a neighbor expressing gratitude for his family's kindness. Each discovery added another layer to his understanding. reminding him that life is built not just on achievements, but on moments, emotions, and connections. By the time he left the house that evening, he was no longer the man who had come to demolish it. He was someone changed, someone who had glimpsed the past in its raw, untouched form. And though he still didn't know the full extent of what the house held, he knew one thing for certain. What he had found today was only the beginning. Something larger, something transformative, was waiting for him in the heart of this deserted home. The millionaire couldn't stop thinking about the hidden room and the letters he had discovered. Something deep inside him insisted that the house had more to reveal, that the true secret was still waiting, buried somewhere within the walls or tucked away in forgotten corners. He returned the next morning, a small flashlight in hand and a notebook to record everything he found. The air inside the house felt cooler now, filled with dust motes dancing in the narrow streams of sunlight. Each creak of the floorboards sounded louder than before, almost as if the house itself was breathing. As he moved through the rooms, his eyes were drawn to a staircase leading to the attic. He had never really explored it as a child, always told it was unsafe. Today, curiosity overpowered caution. He climbed the steps slowly, every creak echoing in the silent house. The attic was dim and cramped, filled with forgotten furniture, boxes stacked high, and old trunks covered in thick layers of dust. He began opening the trunks one by one, revealing bundles of clothes, childhood toys, and old photo albums. Each item seemed more precious than the last, but one trunk in the far corner caught his attention. It was larger, locked with an old rusty latch, yet strangely, the latch seemed fragile, as if inviting him to open it. His hands trembled slightly as he unfastened it. The lid creaked open to reveal an assortment of objects wrapped in cloth and paper. His eyes widened when he saw a small, carefully carved wooden chest, strangely out of place. It seemed too delicate to have survived the years of neglect. He lifted the chest out and carefully untied the ribbons that held it closed. Inside, he found a collection of letters and documents, some in handwriting he recognized, others in hands he had never seen before. He picked up the first letter and began to read. His heart raced as the words unfolded a story he could hardly believe. It was written by someone who had watched over him as a child, someone who had guided his family through hard times in secret. The letters revealed hidden truths about his family's past sacrifices they had made, struggles they had endured quietly, and dreams they had held for him. He learned about a mysterious benefactor who had ensured the family never fell into ruin, about the love and loyalty that had protected them in ways he had never known. Tears filled his eyes as he read, understanding for the first time the depth of his parents' sacrifices. The millionaire realized that the life he had taken for granted was built on love, courage, and hidden support, not just luck or hard work. But the surprises didn't end there. As he explored the chest further, he found a letter addressed to him personally, written decades ago. The handwriting was old and shaky, yet deliberate. Each word carried a weight of emotion and intention. The letter revealed a secret about a distant relative, a treasure that had been safeguarded through the years, not gold or money, but something far more meaningful, a collection of journals, memories, and lessons meant to guide him through life. It spoke of values he had ignored in his pursuit of wealth, humility, kindness, and the importance of remembering one's roots. The millionaire felt a mix of shock and awe. The house that had seemed abandoned and empty was, in reality, alive with messages from the past. A past that was now reaching out to him, trying to teach, warn, and inspire. He realized that the story of his family, his childhood, and even his own path to success was intertwined with these hidden secrets. With each new letter, photograph, and object, the veil over the past lifted, revealing truths that had been carefully preserved. The attic, once a dusty, forgotten space, now felt like a sacred archive, holding everything that mattered, everything that could change how he saw himself, his family, and his life. Hours passed, yet he barely noticed the time, completely absorbed in uncovering what had been hidden for decades. Every page, Every word, every photograph seemed like a puzzle piece of his identity. The millionaire understood something profound. The house was more than bricks and wood. It was a keeper of stories, of wisdom, and of love, waiting for him to understand. By the time he descended from the attic, the chest clutched in his hands. He knew that nothing about his life would ever be the same again. The discovery had unveiled not just family secrets, but a deeper truth about himself, about what really mattered. The millionaire had come to demolish a house, but instead, he had uncovered a legacious story of life, love, and resilience, one that demanded reflection, respect, and perhaps a new path forward. He stepped out of the attic, clutching the chest of letters and journals, his heart still racing from the revelations. Walking through the old house, he saw everything with fresh eyes. The faded, cracked walls now seemed like guardians of memories. The empty rooms felt alive, filled with laughter and stories he had never known. For the first time in years, he saw the true value of his past, the material wealth he had amassed, but the foundation of love and sacrifice that had shaped him. He paused in the living room, a place of countless childhood evenings. Sitting on the dusty floor, he opened a journal. The pages were filled with advice and reflections, a map left for him not to find money, but to become a better person. He read about humility, about helping others without expecting anything in return, about cherishing family through life's toughest challenges. Tears welled in his eyes. He realized that while he had achieved incredible financial success, he had neglected the things that truly mattered. He'd been chasing status and recognition, while the essence of life, family bonds, and kindness had been quietly waiting for him here. A warmth he hadn't felt in years spread through him. It was as if the house itself was transforming him, reshaping his perspective. He spent the afternoon carefully arranging letters and photographs on shelves and tables, letting their stories breathe. He knew then that preserving these memories was far more important than demolishing the house. These walls held lessons and love that no modern design could ever replace. The plans he had for this land had to change. Instead of destruction, there would be preservation. He felt a deep responsibility to honor the past and keep these stories alive. In the kitchen, he found a small box under the sink. Inside were a few old coins, keys, and a photograph of a distant relative who had quietly helped his family through hard times. It was a powerful reminder that he was not alone, that generations before him had laid the foundation for his life. He finally understood that wealth wasn't measured in money, but in the love, support, and wisdom passed down. Sitting on the porch, gazing at the overgrown garden, he felt a profound connection to the house and the life that once filled it. He made a decision. He would restore this place, not just to its original state, but as a sanctuary that preserved memories and honored the lives lived within. This, he knew, was the real treasure he had been searching for. Maybe it could be a small museum or a community space, a place to inspire others to value family, history, and love. That night, as he left, a deep calm settled over him. He had come seeking to erase the past, but instead, he found a way to reconcile it with his future. The house had taught him lessons money could never buy. As he drove away, the chest of memories safe beside him, he smiled. He knew the transformation was just beginning. The deserted old house had changed everything, not for what it was, but for what it revealed about life, love, and the incredible importance of remembering where you come from. Thank you for watching, and if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more. The millionaire stood outside the house one last time, the chest filled with letters and photographs safely in his car. His eyes traced the worn walls, the cracked windows, and the overgrown garden. Every single detail, every imperfection now felt precious, filled with memories, lessons, and untold stories. He had come here with plans to demolish the house, to erase it from existence, but now he knew that would have been a terrible mistake. The house was alive in a way he had never imagined, not with people, but with life lessons and memories that could never be replaced. He remembered the laughter of his childhood, the deep love of his family, and the secrets hidden in the letters he had just discovered. He realized that destroying the house would have meant destroying a part of himself. As he walked around the property, he thought about everything the house had taught him. The journals and letters had shown him sacrifices made quietly, love given without any need for recognition, and courage displayed in ways that money could never, ever measure. He understood now that true wealth wasn't in his bank account or his possessions, but in the life he had lived, the people who had shaped him, and the values he had almost forgotten. Over the next few days, he began planning carefully, determined not to erase the past, but to honor it. He decided to restore the house, to preserve it as a memory of his childhood and a tribute to his family. He imagined a small, quiet room filled with the letters and photographs he found, a space where people could learn about the stories that shaped lives. Maybe he could even invite the community to see the house, to feel the history, and to appreciate the love and struggles of those who came before. The thought filled him with a sense of purpose, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He began cleaning the rooms himself, carefully arranging the letters, photographs, and objects he had found. Every item told a story, and every story deserved respect. The dusty attic was transformed into a small gallery, showcasing journals and photographs with simple explanations of their significance. The living room held old toys and mementos, reminders of the innocence and joy of childhood. Even the garden was given attention. He cleared some of the weeds, but left the wildflowers, allowing nature to tell its own story alongside the house. As he worked, neighbors started to notice. They were curious about the millionaire's unusual project. Some stopped by to ask questions, and he openly shared what he had learned. Slowly, word spread throughout the town about the house that held secrets, lessons, and memories. People came to see it, not because it was expensive or famous, but because it was real, authentic, and deeply human. The millionaire watched them, feeling a warmth grow in his heart. He realized that sharing these discoveries was just as important as preserving them. This house had the power to teach, not just him, but anyone willing to listen. One evening, as the sun began to set, he sat on the porch, looking at the house and garden bathed in a soft, golden light. He felt a sense of completion, not because the work was finished, but because he had found his own peace. The journey that began with demolition had ended with discovery, understanding, and gratitude. He thought of the letters, the journals, the photographs, and the small chest from the attic. Each had revealed secrets, and each had transformed his perspective. The millionaire smiled, realizing that the house hadn't just changed his plans, it had changed him forever. The story of his past, the sacrifices of his family, and the lessons hidden in forgotten corners had reshaped his entire understanding of life. Love, family, memories, and the unseen value of small, everyday actions now mattered more than any fortune he had ever earned. As night fell, he looked at the house one final time for the evening. The lights inside, soft and warm, welcoming. He whispered a quiet thank you, not just to the house, but to the people who had lived there, to the memories that had waited so patiently, and to the lessons that had guided him back to himself. The millionaire had arrived intending to destroy, but he left with a gift far greater than wealth. He had found perspective, gratitude, and a renewed connection to life. The house would remain, not as an old building, but as a living story, a symbol of love, memory, and transformation. And in that moment, he understood fully that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't about what you gain, but about what you learn to treasure. The deserted old house had changed everything, not with walls or windows, but with the stories it held, the truths it revealed, and the life lessons it had shared.